So there was a woman named Martha, and Martha had a pet parrot named Brutus. And Brutus was a smart parrot, perhaps a little too smart, and Brutus learned some bad words. And so Brutus was a parrot that would usually just keep to himself, but when company would come over, Brutus had a tendency to let some of those bad words go. So Thanksgiving was coming up, and Martha's in-laws were due to arrive any minute. And just before her mother-in-law got to the house, Brutus launched into a tirade using a lot of those curse words that he had learned. And so Martha took Brutus and literally stuck him in the freezer for 3 minutes to cool him off. And then she pulled him back out. And she said, "Brutus, have you learned your lesson?" And the bird was shivering and said, "Yes, ma'am, I sure have, but I have one question for you. What did that turkey in there do to you to make you mad?" Edna Cohen describes that very first Thanksgiving the following way. When the pilgrims bowed their heads to pray on that long ago Thanksgiving day, they had little enough to be thankful for as they stood on that cold New England shore, but they had clothes enough to keep them warm and enough to eat with the Indians' corn. And with the nuts and fruits they had learned to gather with log houses to shield them from the weather. But the winter was hard and many had died. There were only 50 at the year's ebb tide. But yet they gathered together to pray, to thank the Lord on this special day. And they invited their Indian friends to the feast, which lasted 3 days, to say the least. Games of strength and skill filled the days, and fireside stories the evening's haze. So shouldn't we, who have so much more, gather with family and friends as in the days of yore, and for all of our blessings, our voices raise to thank God the Father with our praise. Thanksgiving is here, and this week families will travel hundreds, thousands of miles to be with their loved ones. I'd be curious to know how many of you are going to be leaving Nashville to go to a loved one's house this week, somewhere outside of town. Put your hand up. It's usually about half of the folks in church this morning. But Thanksgiving is a wonderful holiday because it's not commercialized. I mean, Christmas seems to keep creeping up earlier and earlier on us, but Thanksgiving is a genuine holiday where we gather with our loved ones, gather with our families, and we give thanks to God for the many blessings that we have in our lives. Next summer, our nation will turn 242 years old. And there are many things that I love about being an American. There are many things that I love about living in this country and being a part of this country. But if I were to ask you this morning how you define the American dream, what would you say? Some would say that the American dream is simply the opportunity for upward mobility for those who work hard. Some would say that the American dream is about giving the next generation something that you didn't have. Some would say that the American dream involves a white picket house or a house with a white picket fence and 2 cars and 2.5 kids. Others would say that it's built upon the premise that all are created equal and have the God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Eugene Peterson, who's a Presbyterian pastor, and he wrote the translation of the Bible called The Message. He translated that version. He says this. He says, "I love being an American. I love this place in which I have been placed, its language, its history, its energy, but I don't necessarily love the American way, its culture and values. I don't love the rampant consumerism that treats God as a product to be marketed. I don't love the dehumanizing ways that turn men, women, and children into impersonal roles and causes and statistics. I don't love the competitive spirit that treats others as rivals and even as enemies." I'm not sure how you would define the American dream or what you would say about it, but I think for many people in our culture, it could be summed up with one word. And that word is more. More. We live in a culture that always wants more. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It inspires people to work hard, to get an education, to get a good job, and to grow in their career. It inspires creativity and innovation and healthy competition. It rewards hard work and sacrifice, and it lies at the heart of our economic system. But I want to tell you this morning that there can be a problem with this concept of more. When more becomes a way of life, and when we can't turn it off, when more keeps us restless and it keeps us from being thankful for the blessings that we already have, then it becomes a problem. We're studying Paul's letter to the Philippians this month, and this was an epistle that was written from a Roman prison. I said last Sunday that it's one of the most positive and inspirational books of the entire Bible. And today we come to what I think is the best chapter and the best passage of verses in this epistle, where Paul says this: "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Do not worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Now, Mary Claire read this passage, but the truth is this passage of Scripture speaks for itself. This is a Thanksgiving sermon found in this wonderful book of the Bible. And there's a lot of wisdom that we can take from Philippians, but I want to lift up three parts of it this morning. And the first is this. He says, "Do not worry about anything." Now that sounds great, but we know that that's far from easy. What Paul is saying is this: in everything, by prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known to God. Paul is saying, pray and give thanks, rejoice and be grateful. You know, it's very hard to worry in life when you're taking the time to thank God for your blessings. It's very hard to worry in life when you're taking the time on a daily basis to count your blessings and to name them, to be still and to be quiet. But the truth of the matter is, so few of us actually take the time to do this. And then we wonder why we can't find peace. We wonder why we can't experience that peace that passes understanding. It's because we don't carve out the time to find peace. Maurice Schwartz once said that so many people walk around with a meaningless life. They seem half asleep, even when they're busy doing things that they think are important. This is because they're chasing the wrong things. The way you get meaning into your life is to devote yourself to loving others. Devote yourself to your community around you. Devote yourself to creating something that gives you meaning and purpose. And a big part of this, I think, is cultivating time to pray, time to experience God, time to find that inner peace. If you're always going and doing and checking things off the list, you're not going to experience peace in your life. The second thing I would lift up from this passage: focus on the good things in life, because I promise you they're there. What does Paul say? Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, then think about these things. Paul didn't say whatever annoys you, whatever bothers you, whatever pesters you, whatever keeps you up at night, whatever drives you crazy. Think about those things. He said focus on the positive, focus on the good. It's there, and it's up to us if we're going to spend our time and energy lifting it up. It's an intentional decision. I mean, for example, do you feel sorry for yourself because you have friends that make a lot more money than you do, or are you thankful to God that you have a job? Do you feel sorry for yourself because you drive an older car, kind of beat up, and your friends all have new cars? Or are you thankful that you have a ride and something to get from point A to point B? Are you going to feel sorry for yourself because your house is not as big as some other people that you know? Or are you going to be thankful that you have a roof over your head? The choice is always ours to make. I got an email years ago that kind of spelled this out, talking about the little things of life, the things that sometimes we overlook. It said this, it said, I'm thankful for the wife who says, honey, it's leftovers tonight, because she's home with me and not with someone else. I'm thankful for the husband who's on the sofa watching football all day like a couch potato, because he's home with me and not out at the bars. I'm thankful for the teenager who is complaining about doing dishes, because that means that she's with her family and not out on the streets. I'm thankful for the taxes that I pay, because it means that I'm employed. I'm thankful for the mess to clean up after a party, because it means that I've been surrounded by my friends. I'm thankful for the clothes that fit a little too snug, because it means that I've had enough to eat. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the lawn that needs mowing, the windows that need cleaning, the gutters that need fixing, because it means that I have a home. I'm thankful for all the complaining that I hear about the government, because it means that we still have freedom of speech. I'm thankful for the heating bill. It means that I'm warm. I'm thankful for the lady behind me in church that is so loud and she sings off key, because it means that I can hear. I'm thankful for the alarm that goes off in the wee hours of the morning, because it means that I'm alive and that I have another day. It's the little things in life that we often take for granted. It's the little things in life that sometimes we just overlook. Lastly, Paul says this, I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little, and I know what it is to have plenty. Let me ask you something. How many people in our culture have learned to be content with whatever they have? I would say not very many. I would say not enough. We had a group of 19 people get back last weekend from Guatemala. And if you want to put your life in perspective, if you want to go to a country and see folks that live in mud huts with 7 or 8 family members, people who have a very little, people who really don't even know what they're missing out on, yet they are so filled with joy and thanksgiving, then go on one of these trips to Guatemala, because I promise you it'll change your perspective. They have so much joy, far more joy than those of us who live in affluent parts of the world. You know, for $36, you can sponsor a child or an elderly person from Guatemala. Megan and I did this about 5 years ago. We sponsored a little boy named Rodolfo, and he's now grown, and we get letters from him. And 3 years ago, I had the chance to meet him when we went to Guatemala. But I can tell you that having that relationship and that sponsorship has been one of the greatest joys in our family's life. And for $36, I mean, think about the things we spend $36 on. Lunch, a bottle of wine, a fourth of a Titans ticket. We wonder if it's worth it. And yet you can give a child in another country something that they won't have otherwise, an education and clothing and a home. Woodmont has close to 200 children sponsored there now, and about 26 houses that have been built. John and Sandra Carpenter kicked that off by building a bunch of those houses, and others have followed suit. It's an amazing ministry, and I challenge you to consider being a part of it. There's tables in the gathering hall this morning where you can go and learn more. But this is sometimes what it takes, is to go somewhere or to see people that live in absolute poverty and to realize that they don't have anything, but yet they are still filled with joy and filled with gratitude and filled with thanksgiving. In fact, they asked one of the members on the trip, I think it was Greg Cashin, they said, what did you have to sacrifice to do this sponsorship? What did you have to sacrifice? $36 a month. We can learn from people that live simple lives. We can learn that you don't need a lot of stuff to be happy and thankful in life. I'm going to close this morning with a piece that I have always loved. I heard my dad use it growing up, and it's One of those pieces that really sums up the fact that we have, as I see it, we have two ways that we can live our lives. We can live our lives complaining, negative, pessimistic, things are always wrong, nothing ever goes right, people are bothering us, letting us down, or we can live our lives hopeful and positive and optimistic, and we can let that warmth and that joy radiate to other people. And the choice is always ours. Are we going to live this way, or are we going to live that way? But here's the piece. It's a poem of sorts. I knew a man whose name was Horner, who used to live at Grumble Corner in Crosspatch Town, and he never was seen without a frown. He grumbled at this, he grumbled at that, he growled at the dog, he growled at the cat, he grumbled in the morning, he grumbled at night, and the grumble and growl were his chief delight. He grumbled so much at his wife that she began to grumble as well as he, and all the children, wherever they went, reflected their parents' discontent. If the sky was dark and betokened rain, then Mr. Horner was sure to complain, and if there was not a cloud about, he'd grumble because of a threatened drought. His meals were never to suit his taste. He grumbled at having to eat in haste. The bread was poor, the meat was tough, the cake he hadn't had half enough. No matter how hard his wife would try to please her husband with scornful eye, he'd look around and then with a scowl at something or other begin to growl. Well, one day as I loitered along the street, my old acquaintance I chanced to meet, whose face was without the look of care and the ugly frown he used to wear. I may be mistaken, perhaps I said, as saluting, I turned my head, but it is, yet it isn't Mr. Horner, who lived for so long at Grumble Corner. I met him the next day. I met him again in pouring rain and stormy wind, when stocks were up, when stocks were down, but a smile somehow had replaced the frown. It puzzled me much, and so one day I seized his hand in a friendly way and said, Mr. Horner, I'd like to know what could have happened to change you so. He laughed a laugh that was good to hear, for it told of a conscience calm and clear. And he said with none of the old-time drawl, why, I changed my residence, that's all. Change your residence? Yes, said Horner, it wasn't healthy at Grumble Corner. And so I moved. 'Twas a change complete, and you'll find me now on Thanksgiving Street. Now every day as I move along, the streets are filled with the busy throng. I watch each face and can always tell where men and women and children dwell, and many a discontented mourner spending his days at Grumble Corner, sour and sad, whom I long to entreat to take a house on Thanksgiving Street. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope this week you will take the time to slow down and to count your blessings and to give thanks to God for everything that you have in your life. Amen.